Hey everyone, welcome to Wildhearts Wednesday, and it's time to talk about one of the two starter decks that are available to play through the Tabletopia website mod. Now, the one I'm going to cover in this video is the Might and Special, or green and blue, combination. So let's jump in and talk about the familiars first. The familiars are what the deck is based around, and for the Might familiar, we have Chrism. Chrism is an 8 power familiar with both Tame and Golem, and says debut, gain block. Ongoing, when Chrism would be KO'd, reset it instead. This is a very powerful familiar in terms of its power. It is very strong, and with block, it's very difficult for opponents to deal with and answer, get it off the board, or face against the power of Chrism. The other one is Ferocity. Ferocity is 4 power with Tame and Magic traits, and on debut, you seek X, where X is the number of friendly magic creatures in this field, and ongoing, when you gain a 3rd, 6th, 9th resource, gain 1 VP. So because the deck uses both Might and Special, it really combines the power of both of these styles. The special cards really take use of speed and doing something to the opposing field. One of the most notable things is the Sune stick, to move a friendly creature or deploy a familiar, and then KO an opposing creature in their field. If you KO'd an opposing ally, add them as a resource. Adding an opposing ally as a resource not only removes something off of the board, but adds to your resources, which ramps up your deck and makes you able to play a lot more of your cards than your opponent per turn. And with 2 copies of the Sune stick in the starter deck, it's very powerful. One of the other main sources of gaining a resource is the Foxtail necklace. So it does have that speed again. You get to draw a card and then you gain it as an exhausted resource. So lots of added ways to gain more resources quickly and be able to use your speed cards and be able to do more actions on each of your turns. The final card that adds to resources is the copy of Take Flight. Again, this also has speed, and it allows you to move a friendly familiar and add 1 card from your discard as a resource. It's a very powerful effect if you use it for the card text, but you can also use this as a support in your resources to allow you to move or deploy a friendly familiar if you'd played a tamer card with using this as a resource to pay for the card that you're playing. So, very tough choice in some games, but if you haven't been able to find the Foxtail necklace, if you haven't been able to find the Sune sticks, Take Flight can be another way to get a resource. Not only does the special in the starter deck allow you to gain a lot of resources, but there's also a lot of interaction with the field and movement. Messing with the other side of the field is something that this side of the deck does very well, like Siltsune, to be able to move or deploy a friendly familiar to the field. And on knockout, you get to choose a field and give each opposing ally in it -1 power. Very powerful effect, and Siltsune able to be knocked out fairly easily with only 2 power. A Sheep is another very powerful card on the special side of this starter deck. Again, it has that speed, and an ongoing effect. When an opposing ally in this field reaches 0 power, you may reset it and take control of it in that field. So not only does it remove it from your opponent's side of the board, but then you gain it on your side of the board. So it adds to the power in that field twofold by removing it and then adding it to your own side. And lastly, for the special part of this deck, the Blisterno is an incredibly powerful piece with an ongoing effect of before scoring, give an opposing creature in this field -1 power for each card you played this round. That can be a lot of cards because of the added gained resources, the speed, and the cheap cost for a lot of the cards in the deck. And sometimes, even if it were just to give -3 power, for example, as an average, that 3 can make the difference between winning the field and losing the field, or even tying. So Blisterno is definitely a very huge piece that can turn the tide of the game. The Might cards have a lot of synergy with block and adding power or subtracting power from the opposing side of the field. There can be powerful combinations that can work really well with the special cards that we already saw, such as Airing with speed and on debut, KO a creature in this field with equal or less power to gain +1 power. Now, because this just says a creature, it can be an opposing creature or a friendly creature to work with cards like that Silsune, or the other KO effect allies in the deck. Giant Growth also has speed, just like many of the special cards do, and allows you to draw 2 cards and choose a friendly familiar. Until the end of this round, opponents have -1 space in their field, so the fields become a little less strong if they only have 3 spaces instead of 4. And then when scoring this round, that familiar that you chose has +6 power. So it creates a very powerful swing in a field by not only removing the ability for your opponent to have as many creatures in that field for power, but also by adding a pretty significant chunk with 6 power for your own side. Tidaldo has a very powerful ongoing effect of when scoring, Tidaldo has +1 power for each ongoing effect you have in play. And as we saw with many of these special cards, there are many ongoing effects in the deck. The Sylph Amulet can give you a lot of synergy with being able to knock out friendly allies with the Airing, and also get back some of those KO allies that you might have knocked out on your own. And if you're able to pull it off, Unity Tactics is a very powerful effect, giving each friendly ally 2 power and block, and if you have 6 or more creatures with block, gain 2 victory points. This is a huge swing if you can pull this off. Many of the Might creatures have block or give block, and there is that synergy there, that potential. Because the card would give the block first, that does add to the 6 or more creatures with block. It's just a matter of making sure that you have that many allies out on the board. And likely, if you're playing that many allies on the board, you already are in a at least semi-strong position to be able to take 1 or 2 of the fields with the strength of your board. So being able to give them 2 power on top of that makes a lot of these weaker units that are only 2 or 3 power instead become 4 or 5, which is much more significant. So overall, the Might and Special starter deck can be very powerful with a lot of little synergies and a lot of different uses for the cards, whether it is using resources in a certain way, gaining extra resources very quickly, being able to knock out or reduce your opponent's creatures or their power levels, or gain or add power to your own fields very quickly. Let me know what you think of these cards and the starter deck in the comments below. Thank you so much for checking out this week's Wildhearts Wednesday video, and I'll see you in the next one.